Right, Rebecca, it's great to have you on the podcast today. How you doing?
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. It's great to have you on. And I just kind of thought I'd introduce you into kind of how you kind of got into what you do because you're very much into like personal development, you like
Mhm.
into health and wellness. You have a podcast called is it
Invisible to invincible, yeah.
Invisible into Invincible? How did you kind of like get into like this kind of area of things?
So I sort of started my social media journey, which is where it's all really kicked off, when unfortunately, I got diagnosed with cervical cancer in 2019, and I had as well polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, all of these diagnoses. And I had to change my lifestyle in order to boost my immune system to get rid of it, basically. Because with cervical cancer, it's to do with a virus that 88% of the population in the US, for example, have this virus, but it lays dormant in your body unless you have a prolonged period of time where your immune system is down. And that's unfortunately what I had as a result of an allergic reaction to something else, but that's unrelated. Anyway, so the doctor said, look, you've got, we're going to come back in 5-6 months to see if it's gone away. You've got this sort of period of time now to try and boost your immune system, change your lifestyle, change your diet to make your body a zone for healing. And I hadn't really, and I was both mentally and physically, I'd been in a very sort of victim mentality, hadn't really wanted to change anything about my life or myself. And I was very mopey and unhappy and not really doing anything about it. And lots of other things were going on in my personal life, which was just all a massive crisis. I was in an abusive relationship. I had lost one of my very, very close relatives, followed by my dog. My house flooded. Everything went wrong basically within a period of sort of, well, it was 18 months really, everything sort of really went wrong. And then I got sick as well. And I just thought, right, that's it. That was, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna give myself the opportunity now to restart. And even if I thought, the mentality I went in with, because I was fully aware that the plan may not work. I may still try as hard as I can and get to the end of 6 months and still have the cancer or get the cancer back. But I went in with the attitude that no matter what, I will have given my body the best 6 months of its life, sort of thing, because I hadn't put any energy into focusing on what I was putting into my body, both emotionally and physically, before then. And I thought, right, how am I going to keep myself accountable for this? Social media. I had
Mm,
always been quite chatty on Instagram. Always posted things that were quite personal, just hadn't posted that often really, but I was always very honest. And I sort of carried on with that and then started posting every day, or three to five times a week, I think it was at the end.
mm.
And I sort of amounted this following then, and people were following both my fitness journey, because I did a lot of fitness things like that, and also my health journey, the food journey, and then as it's grown, the emotional and personal development journey. And I've done loads of sort of courses and coaching and things like that now for myself personally, to get to a place where I'm now impacting other people through the things that I have learned through this transformation journey, really, from both physically and emotionally. So that's really how it all started. And my other social media accounts like TikTok and YouTube and everything like that has sort of grown around that. And the podcast I started in, I think, September, which is very completely random. And I was like, oh, I'll just do it. And it's become something, and I'm sure you'll feel the same about podcasting. Like, once you get into it, it gets addictive. It's so much
Yeah,
fun. It's hard work, really, really hard work, but so
yeah.
much fun. And like, I love doing it. I love speaking to a huge variety of people. I learn a lot from it. And I think a lot of people get a lot of value from the stuff that I put out now as well. So that's really the very short version
Yeah,
of how I got to where I am now.
that's really like inspiring and motivational. Like like hearing your story and you know the things that you came up against and the things you came across and how you decided to kind of turn that around and ultimately be like how can I change the situation? How can I what can I do? What can I
Mm,
do in this time to change it? And to not sit back and to worry about XYZ and the circumstance, and to actually do something and to work on yourself and to develop yourself. And you changed it around and pivoted, and you can provide value to other people through, sharing your experience and what you kind of been through,
Yeah.
and developing yourself, because ultimately, like, we have a choice, don't we, at the end of the day, you know what can I do in this situation, what can I do in this time,
Hmm.
um and you've flipped it around, and I think it's really nice hearing your story that you've been able to do that. And I think, in difficult times, uncomfortable times, I think parts of us kind of grow in that time. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, we gain, like, resilience, and we can then share our story, which can help other people.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a journey for me, and I didn't expect, well, my intention wasn't to end up helping people. I went in very much with a personal mission, and everything that happened outside of that was a bonus, really. And I've said a lot, like, in terms of building on yourself, what you will find is, I because I would think I was so resentful for what happened in my childhood and things like that, and then to my adult life being a bit of a mess as well. I think I was so resentful. I was like, I don't care about anybody else. I'm not here to help anyone else.
Mm,
I was very, very selfishly motivated, which is absolutely fine when you've been through a huge run of rubbish things.
mm,
It's absolutely fine to have a little bit of a pity party, feel a little bit sorry for yourself. But as time went on, and as I healed more and more of those past wounds, past emotional traumas, and things like that, I found myself then offering advice, and people would reach out to me for advice, and I'd be giving it not because I was trying to prove anything to myself, but because I wanted to benefit them. And it just seemed to become a second nature, this sort of wanting to help people thing. And again, like I said, I didn't intend to end up that way, but now it seems to be kind of, that's going to end up being my profession, my calling, which is just amazing how it turns around like that when you don't expect it to.
mm. Yeah, that's it. And I think that's definitely it, isn't it? Like, something happens in your life, and you ultimately, your calling, and what you're gravitating towards just kind of comes to you, if that makes sense. I
Mm,
think when, you're like, this is it. And I think sometimes it doesn't always make sense. You're just doing what you're doing, but there's this thing on the side that is telling you to look at this, like, you need to go towards that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you kind of, and like you said, by before you know it, you're helping other people, even though before it's not really something that you thought would happen, or something that you kind of thought you would gravitate towards. It just kind of
Mm,
is, kind of what it is, kind of thing. You can,
yeah.
and people are seeing, what you're doing and your story, and reaching out to you for help and advice. I think that's priceless. If you can have that and help other people, how
Yeah.
rewarding that is.
Yeah, no, it is good. It's exciting that I can have that impact. Little old me didn't really think anything of that, but it's almost like sort of the reward for going through all the hard stuff is then feeling like I'm being able to share that how I've got through things and using the lessons I've learned. I'm not wasting all those hard times, because they're not a waste at all. That it's like I say about bad days. Bad days are an opportunity for personal growth rather than pauses in progression. It's
Mm,
all about using these negative moments and negative experiences, finding what you can grow from them, realizing how resilient you actually are, realizing the strength that you actually have, and knowing that you can tackle absolutely anything, absolutely anything. And when these fears then crop up, when you think the what ifs, what if that happens just like it did last time, particularly in relationships as well. What if, so and so leaves me? What if my mum dies? I can handle it. I know I can handle it because I've been through so much
mm,
hardship before. I've been to my absolute lowest point, my absolute worst point. I've been through the points where I felt like I've tried to kill myself, sort of thing. I've been through these moments, and I look
mm,
back, and I didn't have even half the coping mechanisms and learning mechanisms I have now. And if those situations happen again, I know that I have the strength to get through them, even though
mm.
it'd be rubbish to have to go through things like that. But it's
Yeah.
life, isn't it? We can't, we're not owed anything here. So
Mm,
yeah, no, it's amazing that you can make the bad stuff end up being good.
yeah, that's it. And I think that's it, isn't it? Like, and going through that, and turning it around, and that, as you mentioned, which I think is key, is that we're not, owed anything. Like there's,
Mm,
some people. I think I used to be like that in the past. At one stage, I felt like I was owed something. I was quite arrogant,
mm,
and felt like that things just had to come my way, and it doesn't work like that. I think it's it's incredible how like you can turn things around, and how you go through certain situations and you've been in certain places, and pushing through that. And like when you've been to the lowest, you can push through that and you grow, and it just shows you how resilient we are as people and human beings, and how we are stronger than we think, and when how we can push through and grow and help other people. And I think we're all kind of here for a purpose, really, if that makes sense. Don't you think? Like
mm.
we all got our own calling, we all got our own meaning and purpose. And I think I believe that things happen for a reason. I
Yeah,
think about things in my past. You think it all kind of builds onto you as a person. All these small events or big events, it all kind of dominoes and build you to who you are. If that makes sense over time, even when we kind of don't really realize it.
yeah. And that process I went through when all of those bad things were happening at that point in my life, there was a moment, actually, I went to Scotland just before my last surgery, and I went on this solo Scotland trip, slept in my car,
Mm,
explored everywhere. I'd always wanted to go, I'd never been. And it was the most incredible trip of my life, sort of thing. I just,
yeah,
after everything I'd been through, it was a real refreshing experience. And I was still in the midst of it all, 100% in the midst of it all. I
yeah,
was still heavily grieving. I was still about to go in for my last surgery, which then had a huge healing processes after that as well. But I
mm,
remember sat there thinking, it all makes sense now. All of this
mm,
makes sense now, and that 2019 was that year for me. It was the hardest year of my life, but also the most transformative. And, you know, I would never be where I am now without any of it. I don't know what I'd
mm.
be now without any of it. Probably just, sat on my sofa being miserable, like, oh, moaning about life. So, I mean, I'd never get to the point where I'm now, where I'm like, I have to do the work. I realize now I have
Mm,
to do it. And like you said, like it's about getting accessing your ego and being like, right, pipe down, and acknowledging that your ego's there, that your ego's present, and
mm,
that we make mistakes, we do things wrong, and that actually admitting that you've, even in debates and arguments, things thinking, oh, actually your point of view is valid, and I haven't thought about it before, and I'm going to take yours in and take notice of yours.
mm,
Knocking that ego down and letting everything else in, and being more open-minded to both yourself and other people, it's actually really refreshing, and it feels really good. So it's,
mm.
it is about that as well, really.
Yeah, no, that's definitely key. And I mean, it kind of makes me think back to kind of like things that I went through in my, I had a massive ego when I was a teenager, and like I had to have like a big accident for me to kind of come out of that, snap out of that ego.
Mm,
And I think it's kind of what it's like a blinder almost. People are, they're blinded by their ego, and either pleasing people or whatever, for whatever reason.
yeah.
And it's your genuine self is far more, like deep down below your ego is who you really are.
Mm,
That ego is just like we all have an ego, and we're people, but there's that healthy balance with it, isn't it? And I think you know and when you mentioned with going to Scotland and going there by yourself, and
mm,
those you're healing, and you've had those operations, and probably ultimately like trying to find yourself, trying to grow through that, and
yeah.
I think it's important to spend time by ourselves now, and I think there's a lot of growth to be taken from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And having spent majority of last year, so I spent 6 months of last year not even dating or anything like that. Obviously, we had a pandemic, so which doesn't help. But I intentionally
Yeah, it doesn't.
didn't. Yeah, it doesn't help. I intentionally sort of, when I split up with my ex, I split up a year ago, and then I sort of dated really, and then from was it summertime, from July to December, really, I said, right, that's it, absolutely nothing, not even gonna show any interest or anything like that. And I would recommend that period of single life to everybody. I honestly think you cannot develop fully as a human without being an adult, being a single adult, and finding a way to make it fun. Because the single life, and I talk about a huge amount because like relationships fascinate me, but being single has become such a negative thing. It's become so stigmatized and the wrong thing and abnormal to be single, whereas it's absolutely not. And in fact, if we go in life with the mentality that we're only whole in a relationship, then we're never going to be happy, because in relationships you'll then become codependent and rely on other people so much that you lose your own identity because you become an us, whereas if you find yourself in that single phase and feel so content with yourself, then that you're not going to let in the people who don't like get to where you are, your boundaries are so much more secure, and you're so confident in who you are that even if Prince Charming comes along, but he's not quite good enough for you, then you're strong enough to chuck him away, because you're like, I'm not giving any of this amazing time that I spend with myself to anybody else, because why would I do that? The person that you choose to be with has to be an addition, not a necessity. They have to be better than the time you spend on your own. So no, I think being single and spending time alone, even if you're not single, spending time alone is so, so valuable. And it's different to, you can be alone in the house, but it's about, I take myself on dates. I'll go to the cinema when the places are open. I go to the cinema. And even like a few weeks ago, got in my car, got a meal deal from Boots, went up to see the hills and stuff, and watched the sunset with a picnic in my car and a nice orchestral soundtrack. And I was like, I'm on a romantic date with myself. It's stuff like that you just think, treat yourself like you would do it in a relationship. Like, you are your own soulmate. We are the only people that we're going to be with through our whole lives, from the beginning to the end. May as well be best friends with them, So yeah.
No, I love that, and I really connect with that. I think it's so true, isn't it? I think I did a video about it yesterday, actually. Funnily enough, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking there's something about being a human being. Like, people sometimes fear being alone, or they don't like being alone. But like, there's so much to be taken from being kind of single, to get to know yourself, to understand who you are, to have that good relationship with yourself. Because ultimately, like I say, that relationship you have with yourself is going to have how you have relationships with other people, if that makes sense. It's like, if you don't know yourself, you don't like yourself, or whatever, that can come into, like you say, codependency. And if you have a relationship with someone, and I've experienced that you may put on the other person, or the other person may put on you, because you're not fully okay in yourself. So, do you know what I mean? And that's kind of sometimes why things don't work out, I find, and why there's so much to be taken from being single. But there's the stigma around it sometimes. It's like when people probably mention turning 30, there's this stigma around turning 30. Like, okay, it's just a number,
Yeah.
but being single, you need to, like you said, kind of treat yourself, and to love yourself, and to be able to do things like that by, having a picnic in your car, or whatever, like, or going to McDonald's drive-through, which I do sometimes, and I'll just sit somewhere, listen to music.
Yeah.
So, but these things are important because, like I said, it's us with ourselves in our lives, and it's who we spend most of the time with, And if you can have that okay in yourself, and then if someone else has that okay in themselves, then I think that's kind of how it should work, if that makes sense. Because then that's kind of what I think. But I
Yeah.
agree.
And it's not about, having to be completely healed and everything to go into a relationship. The way we need to sort of look at relationships more is an opportunity for a safe healing container. Having that somebody around who is secure, who is healthy, who is, they have their own issues, you have your own issues. If you see
Yeah,
somebody as perfect, then it's absolutely, there's codependency issues there. Nobody should ever be seen as perfect. We should always be able
yeah,
to recognize that people have flaws and acknowledge them and respect them and try and find ways to navigate around them whilst knowing that they're there, you know. But
Mm.
having sort of a healthy relationship is about creating this bubble, this zone of safety where you can say things out loud that you only ever say inside your head, you know, because you
Mm.
feel so comfortable with that person that they give you that opportunity to voice things, and they question it, and
Mm.
they, you know, provide a different kind of side of view.
Yeah.
And looking at relationships rather than as we must be together all the time, we must, everything we do must be, you know, must be as one, is having two separate individuals who you know are just run next to each other, not us like stuck to each other like glue, run along
Mm.
next to each other, and you know, egg each other on every now and then, and sit there and, you know, want to have a cry, want to have a chat, want to talk about deep stuff, then you can, as well as having fun, you know, rather
Yeah.
than what relationships have become, which is, I think I shared something on my Instagram yesterday, which is this post about people saying, oh, you're, you know, you're the perfect one, you're the only one, I couldn't live without you, kind of thing. That's unhealthy. That's unhealthy. I couldn't live without you. That's unhealthy. That's codependency, you know? That's not a safe space for you, because that's your soul then just ruining all its boundaries because they're so attached to somebody else. But we've been taught that that's the only way relationships work because Hollywood shows us that it is, you know. That's exactly what we've all grown up watching, as these fantasy love stories where everything is perfect and we must be
Mm.
with somebody and it must be exactly like this. So we think it should be. We think if we're not feeling that super, you know, highly activated feeling all the time, and God,
Yeah.
there's a problem here, there's a crisis in a relationship, you know. And that's where a lot of, I think, issues do stem from. It's from this
Mm.
expectation that we have been spoon fed. But you know,
Yeah. No, it's I find the relationships so interesting to talk about, and I think like it's like a journey almost. And I think it's, you know, trying to just figure out what it is that you want, you know, and the stand, you know, having those standards, and I think like relationships have to be that place where you can communicate, and like I say, you know, it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Like, you know, that's kind of, there's going to be those days where, you know, things might happen or argue, or, you know, but that safe place where you can share how you feel, where you talk about, you know, that safe place you mentioned where you can be you, and that other person understands you and respects you.
mm,
It's not out of their needs and, you know, all of that, because
yeah,
it's, you know, that happens sometimes. And sometimes, like you said, you can lose yourself, and then over time you're kind of blind to it sometimes, and then it's much harder to get out of. So I think it's so important, like I said, to for it to be mutual and balanced, and to be healthy ultimately, you know,
yeah,
and to think about what kind of people you're attracting into your life. Because I think, I mean, I was thinking like sometimes we have subconscious patterns where we can attract certain people into our
yeah,
lives. And I'm an empath, and
mm-hmm,
sometimes I've attracted certain people into my life that weren't, you know, overly good for me. And I think like a lot of it comes down to self awareness, you know, as well, probably, you know, being aware of yourself and your energy. And you mentioned, you know, your time and energy is important. It's something you can't necessarily get back, and it's, I think it's so key in relationships because it's your health as well, isn't it? You know, and you think about
yeah.
the things that you went through. You don't want to, you know, you wouldn't want to go back to that place. That, do you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
that's kind of how I see things.
Yeah, no, it is really interesting. And going back to what you said about attracting sort of the wrong people and things like that, in spirituality, which I'm big into as
Yeah.
well, we call it mirroring. So like
Mm.
you attract people into your life that you're mirroring some kind of reflection of. So, you know, the first sort of people I started dating when I was dating again, were giving me back the things that either the things you're lacking or the things you got too much of. So, for
Mm.
example, me being a bit of a, oh, I don't want a relationship, you know, I'm not, you know, commitment issue sort of thing, will then attract the people who are emotionally unavailable, you know, because that's exactly what I'm giving off. And stuff like that. Like it's, and then, you know, as very typical with me, I'm then all like, oh no, wait, I do want a relationship, but I'm now into this situation where I've attracted
Yeah.
that person, you know. But it's about, you know, having the boundaries and being really, really strict with those boundaries. I would never be able to do that. Like I'd never get into that situation again now because of how much I've learned and stuff. But I'm like massively strict with my boundaries now, to the point where I won't, even if I've been dating someone for like 2 months, if somebody was then like crossing one of my boundaries repeatedly and I was like, this isn't okay, and I'd had that conversation with them, I'd be like, okay, I'm gone, that's it. I'm not thinking, oh, I can't live without them, oh no, I'm going to miss them in my life. Do you know what I mean? Like, cool, I've enjoyed the time we've had together. Everything is temporary. We do not own people. We do not own relationships. We do not own that connection they have with us. They can walk away tomorrow and forget you even existed and start slagging you off to their parents. Do you know what I mean? Like that perfect life that you create in a relationship, it's all temporary. And there's no point in clinging on to that for the sake of wanting it to be in a box, wanting it to be this perfect relationship in in this box, rather than thinking, no, we are two separate people with our own lives, our own worlds, our own dreams and aspirations and missions and challenges, and we can help each other with those without becoming attached to them,
Yeah, no, it's really key. And I think there's so much growth to take place in relationship. I think, sometimes you might grow so much and then you might outgrow the other person, or you meet them for a set reason amount of time, and it's like, okay, this is my way and that's your way. But I think ultimately, you should be able to grow with that person and encourage them as well. And I agree with you. And I think it's so important to talk about as well, and think about, because ultimately on our own path, trying to, work it all out. And I was thinking, like, so like in your like podcast, like what do you focus on? Like what's that about? Like kind of what do you kind of go into in your podcast?
It's a real range of topics, because I am so super personal on my Instagram and so super emotional, and I basically, I call it brain vomit. Everything that I go through in my head, gets written down. Everything, absolutely everything gets written down. So I sort of started out with the title really gives it away, The Invisible to Invincible. I like focusing on challenges where people have gone through some period of growth that has transformed them. And I like sharing how I've gone through certain situations and gone through certain things. My last podcast, which is out today, actually is called The Bad Day Survival Guide. It's tips and tricks that I've learned literally I'm talking over the last 3 months. That's how much I'm growing constantly. These aren't, lifelong things I've had. I'm learning all the time at the moment, from the resources I have and things like that. And my podcast is about giving people a different perspective, usually one that's a little bit, it's hard, it's quite, hits home a little bit brutal sometimes, a bit like, whoa, Rebecca, all right, don't attack me here, because sometimes we need that. Sometimes we get sat with being, at the comfort and the safety and the everything's perfect, and I can't, I don't want to change, I'm comfortable being sad, to right, that's it, snap out of it. That's sort of sometimes the approach I do go for on my podcast. So
that's great. That's really nice. And I think sometimes people need that. Some people need that. Come on, that perspective switch. Stop that reframing of their perspective in their mind. I think it's quite powerful, and I think it's nice that you can do that. You've got that platform where you can share, your experience and what you've got going on, and then interview other people and see their stories and what they're what they've been through and how they've changed. And I think it's so rewarding, and impactful, doing podcasting. And we were talking about it before, it can be quite addictive, and but there's so much growth, I think, that you can experience in yourself and through other people as well, listening to it and watching it, and taking goodness from what you put out.
No, it's a very good platform. I'm very lucky to have the sort of influence I do on there now, and you have to be careful with it as well, because everybody takes in from social media what they choose to take in. So people who really have an issue with social media are like, oh, it's always so toxic, so negative. Yeah, if you choose to follow toxic, negative people, it will be. Yeah, absolutely. That's the choice that you make. And I'm still now every day seeing accounts that I would have followed maybe 5 years ago popping up and thinking, this doesn't sit with my values anymore. therefore I'm going to unfollow them, because otherwise I'm just feeding myself toxic information. I use my social media now, when I go on it for my own personal use, as an educational platform. The people I follow, the people I see the stories of and see the posts of, are all my spiritual teachers, my spiritual gurus, my mental health coaches, people that I get information from, rather than, so-and-so's got lip filler, or a new Gucci bag. It's about what you choose to take in as much. And again, that's another brutal hitting home thing, because you want to sit there and be like, oh, it's social media's fault. It's social media that's giving me this information. No, honey, you're choosing to follow them. You're choosing to follow the people that are toxic. We have a choice to make. It's hard unfollowing people that you've been watching for years, because you've got to be realistic with yourself and be like, no, actually, that isn't healthy, and I need to be honest with myself about that now. It's difficult, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
No, I agree. I think that's a really good point to make. And I heard someone say the other day, "Oh, don't like social media, or it's not very good." And I was like, "Well, kind of say it said something similar to what you just mentioned. Is like it's a tool. It is a tool, and it's up to you how you want to use it and what you want to look at. And yes, there's an algorithm and all of that, but just being aware of it, and like on the news feed, things pop up sometimes, and
Yeah.
you can get drawn in. Like kind of looking at why you're going on there. Like, what am I posting something? Am I going on there to network or message and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
You have to kind of be very careful, and sometimes you can learn the hard way. And for me, I remember Facebook back in the day, and people at school I was with having arguments, and then my family getting involved, and then I was
Yeah.
just like, and that's why I rarely go on Facebook now. But yeah, you have to be aware, don't you? You have to be accountable for yourself ultimately, don't you?
Absolutely. And each platform is different. Like Facebook is very different to Instagram in that sense, and you monitor what time you use on each one. Instagram, I spend a lot more time on than the other apps, because that's where I get my value from. But again,
Yeah,
I'm not taking in stuff that's bad for me. And even it's
yeah,
funny, because even sort of last week, we're still in day 3,000,000 of lockdown here, and it's like,
yeah,
it gets frustrating when you see people abroad who are, so I follow a lot of my coaches live abroad, so that's where they
yeah,
actually live. And so, normally I'm fine with it, but sometimes when I'm seeing them, on a beach
yeah,
or with all their plants and things, I'm like, oh God. And it did get to me a little bit last week, and I had to pull myself away, because I don't, they provide the most amazing content, the most amazing educational information for me personally. And that, they don't mean to brag about
no,
them living where they
no,
do,
no,
and it's just that was me then being, that was my issue, that wasn't their issue, that wasn't them being toxic, that was me taking that in. I had to step away, be like, right, Rebecca, let's have a chat about this. Okay, you're not going anywhere, you can't travel until at least the summer. You've just got to, somebody once said to me, you don't find yourself in a suitcase. It's here, it's inside, it's in your heart that you find yourself.
yeah,
And as much as I'm craving to travel, why am I craving to travel? Because I want to escape. Why do you want to escape? Because everything feels so torturous and trapped right now. Okay,
yeah,
what can I do in this situation to deal with this right now? Because there are no other
mm,
options. I am pushed up against the wall, and I have got to deal with the cards that I'm dealt.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah. That's exactly it. And I think that's something that I've definitely kind of related to recently. And I think like I've got loads of friends in like America, and some people in like Dubai and stuff like that. And
Mm.
it's pretty much open there. And part of me did kind of, I don't know, part of me will one stage to feel a little bit like that. I kind of thought, oh, oh my God, they can do X, Y, Z. But then you have to have that chat with yourself, like you
Yeah.
just mentioned, and to just sit with yourself, and kind of have that little chat to yourself, and tell yourself, things are gonna be okay, and that it's just different there, and that's okay, good for them and stuff,
Mm.
and but yeah, it can be difficult what we let in sometimes. If you're not careful, it can really impact you. But I think ultimately, if you can have that power, as you said, to go away and be self-aware, and to have that chat to yourself, then you can, do you know what I mean, push through that and
Yeah.
shift through that. And it's a difficult situation, I mean, for a lot of people. And I think, but there's that silver lining to it. What can I do in this? What can I do? Okay, can't control this, but I can do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And I think it's great what you're doing. I think it's great that you're using, you're growing in your, you know, from your experience, and you're helping other people, and you're
Mhm.
doing something that's positive and impactful, and you're providing value, and you're doing something that you love and enjoy. I think that's what we should all do. And it's really nice to see you doing that as well.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's enjoyable, and like I said, I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but when you tune into yourself, your dharma, your purpose, it finds
Mm,
you. As corny as that sounds, it does. It finds you when you start aligning with the things that are true to yourself. Everything else
yeah,
falls into place.
yeah, that's it. And I was just thinking, like, do you have any favorite like books at all that you like to read or anything like that?
So my favorite book, my personal Bible, is Eat, Pray, Love, and it's
Mm,
very, it's not very unique, I just Elizabeth Gilbert is my idol. She's the writer of this book, because she is the one that made me realize I could write about my feelings, and it wasn't illegal to talk about my feelings to the general public. It's not a crime. It's different. It's different. And, it's changed a lot over even the last few years. It's become way more acceptable.
mm,
Um, but yeah, she talks about her emotional processes and everything and her emotional journey. And there's so many quotes from that book that I use in my life day in, day out. I really, really relate to it. And all of her writing actually, I think is really phenomenal.
yeah,
So yeah.
that's awesome. I mean, I've seen the film. I think it's my mom's favorite film actually. So I've seen the
Mm,
film, and yeah, it's nice that we can listen to audiobooks or read books and take things from it. I think there's a lot to learn from books. It kind of they can really make you think about your own life, and you can draw from that.
yeah. Another one would be a book called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. And it's like, if you've ever read The Secret or anything on manifestation stuff, it's like a step up from that. Basically, I call it the university version of The Secret.
Mm,
Um, and I love that. I love that attitude. That's like, right, get up off your victim mentality and start doing the work, sort of thing.
yeah,
And it's about that, and about with manifestation, focusing on a feeling rather than an actual thing and stuff like that. But that's a whole different subject.
yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. It sounds a really good book, and I'll definitely have to check it out. And I think manifestation's like really deep, and I think it's real though. I think people can manifest what they want, and as long as they put in that work and they work towards what they you know think wanting to happen, if that makes sense.
Mm.
um but yeah, it's powerful stuff. And I was thinking, do you have any like role models or mentors like now, or like kind of growing up?
So Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer of that book,
Yeah.
all of her everything that she, where she shows up on social media and everything always really, really aligns with me. She's so authentic, so honest. I think, she's definitely been she's the person that I'd want, when they ask you, who do you have at a dinner table sort of thing, she'd be the only one I wanted. I think she's just incredible. And then I follow a couple of sort of my coaches on Instagram are actually just individual people that I've just really,
Yeah.
really resonate with. And like I do suggest that to people, the kind of coaches and gurus and guides that connect with you are so unique to you and so
Mm,
unique to the issues you're facing. So like there's one that I've been following for ages called Emma Sabine, and that I think I'm now at the point where I've probably learned as much as I can from her, and then another one will appear at some point for me to find my next lesson.
mm, mm.
So it's great having role models, but they sort of change a little bit with me as time goes
Yeah.
on, as I learn new things from different people.
Mm. That's it. No, I really like that. And I think like people, as you said, role models change, and that's okay. I
Mm.
mean, they're not meant to. Well, as people say, they're not meant to stay in your lives the whole time. Stuff like that. You're
Mm.
meant to grow and kind of have them for a period. And yeah, no, it's really important, isn't it, to have role models? Like you said, sometimes it's not always the famous people on TV; it's the people that we know. And I
Mm.
and I and I feel like that as well, since I've networked to people on social media. You meet people, wow, look at what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's great. And where can people find you on like social media and like your website if you have one?
So all of my social media handles conveniently are the same. It's at Rebecca Allen with 4 A's in between. Nice and long. I know, it's brilliant. It's catchy.
Yeah.
And my podcast is called Invisible to Invincible, and it's available on all major streaming platforms.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I'll definitely, share your details in the link and in the bio. And,
Perfect.
I'll definitely, share your content as well for you and put it out there.
Amazing.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. But I hope you have a great day. All the
Yeah,
best on
thanks
what
so
you're doing.
much for having me on. It's been a really good chat.
No, you're welcome. Welcome.
Awesome.